Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Health and Family Life Education, the Parenting Edition. I'm Tricia Sims. So this morning things seem to be working and we're very glad. We're just going to give you a few minutes, not even minutes, a couple of seconds to join us in this exciting program as we're going to continue talking about health and family life education from the parent perspective. We are still in that 5 to 9 category. So we know that you want to find out a lot more. So we really hope that you're going to join us. So if you're viewing, remember to like, share, and comment because you don't want to miss this information. You want to be present. You want to participate. Remember to leave a comment and let us know how you are enjoying this or how you're finding it very informative. So let's see that you're coming in. Let me check and see that you're coming in, that you're there, that you're ready to participate in this half-an-hour session with us, and that you're telling your friends, you're sending a message and letting people know that we are talking about health and family life education from the parent's perspective, and we want you to be part of this conversation. You know, sometimes as parents, when we talk about parents, our first educators, sometimes we ourselves need to be educated. And you know, this morning I was saying to myself, sometimes we don't know. How do we find out? And this is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn together in this space. So tell your friends, like, share, comment, and join in on the conversation with us. So at this time, I will invite our 2 guests to join in with us as we continue this conversation from last week. So we have with us today Tonya Gooding. Tonya is the president of Communities Alive for Education and Training. Tonya, welcome. Thank you for coming back this week to join us.
Thank you very much, Tricia. Happy to be here.
Good. And we also have with us Elizabeth Innes, who is the secretary, the administrator at Communities Alive for Education and Training, with us today, sharing from that parent perspective. Elizabeth, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tricia.
Okay, it's good to have you all with us. So at this point, I want to hand over to you. You know, before I hand over to Tonya, you know, there's in last week's Catholic News. Now, I hope you got your Catholic News, and I hope you read this article by His Grace, because he talked about take a stand for family morality and parenting rights. Yeah. And if you haven't, I'll just pull it up on my screen so that I can read that little section. It talks about parenting rights. Somehow it's not coming up on my screen. So I will read it for you. He talks about the Catechism of the Catholic Church states parents have the first responsibility for the education of their children. They bear witness to this responsibility first by creating a home where tenderness, forgiveness, respect, fidelity, and disinterested service are the rule, meaning that's the norm of the day. Now, we know that doesn't happen in all families, and we are working towards that. But that is what the church is inviting us to. It's an invitation. And that's from the Catechism 2223. So at this point, Tonya, I know last week we started a conversation between 0 to 5 years on what should be happening at that time. I know that there's some background information, a little more that you want to share with us. At this time, I invite you to do so.
Okay, well, I'll just share my screen so we can be guided on the conversation a little bit. So the feedback I received, some parents were asking about what exactly is the theory behind Alive to the World? How can we as parents make it applicable in our own home? So this is what I wanted to just clear up a little bit. So Alive to the World is based on a narrative approach. And I know we mentioned that last week. Why that is important is that we use a story, then we have a discussion based on the story, and out of that comes an activity, something putting it into practice. So that is knowing, accepting, and then doing. The reality is this is how we learn all skills. not just virtues. And that is why the whole concept behind the Alive to the World is something that any parent can benefit from. So part of the idea behind it is to develop critical thinkers. I believe all of us as parents have heard our Ministry of Education saying that is what we need to develop as a nation, et cetera, but how? So part of critical thinking is being able to analyze things, group things into sections of what has similar characteristics, logical thinking, pros and cons. If I do this, what happens? And of course, having ideas and being able to express them effectively. So that is part and parcel of how the Alive to the World program is delivered. And we as parents can adopt the same strategy within our homes by asking the right questions after certain particular things, like maybe a movie, or maybe something that's happened in the papers, or even something that we've read, what our children will bring to us and so forth. So it's the same kind of process. And I'll just focus here on, in doing that and asking the right questions with logic and reasoning, our children then come to discover with their own knowledge, the virtues, the skills, your value system, all these things, rather than having it being imposed on them. And I think we as parents would really like our children to grow in that aspect, in that they believe it rather than us just telling them this is what you must believe. So that's why I took the opportunity to just flesh it out a bit. And of course, if Elizabeth would like, she can give a concrete example.
Thank you for sharing that, Tanya. Elizabeth, would you like to join us in the conversation at this time?
Yes, as Tanya says, you can use simple issues and simple things at the home to sort of engage your children. Now, this area of all technology and TV, most times they want to be stuck in front of the TV and they watch TV, that the brain is being just fed information and they're numb. So having them ask the simple question, so what did you like about that movie? It helps them to stop and think. I just looked at something and I just looked at it. So asking the questions, allow them to now stop and think, oh, well, I like this about, well, why did you like that about the movie? Or they're watching one of those little TikTok things they always seem to be interested in. What was interesting about that? Why did you like it? If you were in that position, would you have done something differently? And this is how you engage them in the conversation. And not only that too, because it plays a part also in how they think emotionally, because some things they will see something and get them angry. So why are you angry? What makes you feel that way? So it also digs into their emotions as well, in terms of helping them to stop and really think and even evaluate themselves. Yeah, I think that really ties into all of that. Yeah.
Thank you. So what I heard Tanya sharing there was it knowing, being, doing? That's the model that
knowing, accepting, doing.
Knowing, accepting, doing, right? And then it's using critical thinking, logical thinking. Those were two things that I heard as well, in terms of what the basis of Alive to the World, critical and logical thinking. Is that what you shared?
Yes, and being able to express it after the fact.
And being able to express. Now, I am happy that you share that, because, many times when it relates to areas of sexuality and love, people say, well, what do all that have to do with sex? And in teaching, talking to children about sexuality and love and so on. Can you give us like some examples of making the connections between knowing, accepting, and doing as it relates to expressing our sexuality in that age group of 5 to 9 years? Can you give us an example there?
Sure, fair enough. Now, with Alive to the World, we normally use stories based on, it could be at home with family, it could be with a sport. So in the area where we're talking about sexuality here, perhaps a new sibling being born into your family, it's a great opportunity for a child to see firsthand, oh, a baby, okay? Start asking the questions about, well, why do I have a sibling? How, mommy and daddy, do I now have a sister? What happened before? And that is where we started a conversation last week about courting and marriage, etc. And of course, based on the age group, you would define and tell them what is age appropriate in terms of an act of love, bringing a child into the world. So again, it is a case of opportunities to relate to your being, who you are, related to context situations. So it could be, so that was one example in terms of having a sibling and the opportunity to have the conversation so they get in tune with who they are and why they're here. I'm sure Elizabeth can add to that as well.
Elizabeth, you want to share anything on that?
Yes, and a lot of times, you know, they think the stories are guided. And as Tonya rightly said, age and stage. Each parent knows at what stage the child is developed mentally. So then they would give them the information accordingly. Sometimes it's referred to in terms of a plant. You know, when you plant a seed and the seed bursts into the tree and the plant, that is a gift that's coming into the world. And you have to nurture that. So they sort of parallel it in terms of a new life coming into the world. So this new life needs nurturing, it needs care, it needs love. And that is how you express it in terms for the children to understand. It's like having a new life into the world, and you have to nurture and care for this life. So they too will then see themselves as someone, I am being nurtured, mommy and daddy, grandparents, show that love so that they can develop and they can grow and blossom. So that's how we parallel it instead of an age and stage. So as they get older, they understand that love, and most people think love is a verb, love is an action. Love is something that is given, done through action. And through action is respect, through communication, through mutual agreement. And all of this is part of showing that love. So this is how we do it in terms of the age group.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. Now in Amoris Laetitia, and as you all know, we are still in the year of the family, the Amoris Laetitia family. And in number 228, it talks about education in the faith has to adapt to each child, since all the resources and recipes do not always work. Children need symbols, actions, and stories. And based on what you have shared about a life to the world, symbols, action, and stories, I am getting that knowing, that acceptance, and that being in terms of that, in terms of what is shared there in Amoris Laetitia. Now, last week when we left off, we were talking about the primary time for development, for developing of conscious aspects of gender and identity rules is within this 5 to 9 year age group. And we also talked about it's the most active time for conscious formation and emotional and intellectual development. Can we have that conversation now about feelings, especially with children during this 5 to 9 years age group? Tonya, would you like to share a little bit there?
Sure. So this is a crucial age of helping our children, firstly, to identify what emotion they're feeling, give it a name, and know how to manage. Key time in terms of development, because we need in that context, 5 to 6, we are now going out to school, now engaging with other people outside of the family. So we need to equip our children to actually understand how you interrelate with others and how your actions affect other persons in terms of their emotion and how other people's actions would affect yours. So that is why it's crucial at this point. So we put it in the context of who am I, how do I feel, and therefore how do I behave with others. So naming the emotion is also very crucial. I have 5 sons, and I did realize that this was not necessarily a strength. I think females are more in tune with their emotions, even from that age. Whereas most of the times, my boys would simply say, I'm feeling bad or good, right? Very narrow vocab. So it's up to us as parents to help in terms of drilling down a little bit. Okay, so what exactly happened to help you make you feel this way? And, you know, give them a choice of other words. Perhaps you feel guilty, you feel sad, you know, give them options and help them to connect the emotion with the actual word that fully represents what they're feeling. And of course, that goes on from how you feel, how you make others feel, and how you affect the emotions of others within your community and environment.
Thank you for sharing that. So Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you in terms of an example, give us an example of from your own experience or what you may be aware of, based on what Tanya shared in terms of naming emotions and expressing it.
Sure. I mean, I have one of each, a boy and a girl, and my son loves Legos. But they at the ages of 5, 6, 7, they play something and it just doesn't fit. It is not working, and they get upset and they will throw it on the ground and pout. That is those little instances you can then approach them and say, okay, so what happened? Well, this didn't fix it. So how are you? So what did that make you feel? Mommy, I feel, and they will say, I feel mad. I said, yes. But then as they get older, they can say now, you're frustrated. Did it worry that you couldn't get it to fix? And then they identify, okay, well, frustrated because it just wasn't working. So as Tonya said, as they go in, as the ages and they get older, you can give them the options to name it, because most of the times the boys is just bad, angry, mad. But in helping them name it and giving them the options to name it, they're then able to identify it. While as a girl will just come and say, Mommy, the dolly just stopped working and I'm upset or I'm sad, And the other thing is, when something doesn't work, the first instinct is to toss it aside. So the toy what was lighting before, it stopped lighting, just threw it in the corner. You didn't stop to think, well, maybe I can ask for help. So you bring all these things in to help them to not only assimilate how they feel, but what to do about it. Because, okay, it stopped working and you were upset, you were angry, yes. But think about it, you just destroyed the toy you love to play with. And these are the other things, and they stop and say, don't you still like the toy? Yes. So if it stopped working, what was the best thing to do? Come and ask Mommy, and the solution could have been, it just needed new batteries. So instead of venting the emotion, they can now say, okay, look, ask for help. Because a lot of times they want to understand how they're feeling and what they're going through. So something is wrong, come and ask for help. So they've learned, if it's anger, if it's sad, Mommy, this has happened. And then, as the parent can then sit down and help them identify the emotion, what the problem is, and even help them work out a solution.
Yes. As you were chatting there, I kept thinking about, there's some parents, there's some children who don't have the parents at home to help them to label their emotions. It's either good, bad, or good or bad. That's how I feel, or angry. Those are the three emotions in inverted commas that people are aware of. But it's how do we, give people more language. And during this time, children are learning in school. They're getting more words and getting more language to express themselves. So the school really supports the home here in terms of providing more language. Now, and labeling of things for the children. Now, during the 7 to 8 period, that age range, sometimes we see tantrums reappearing, in a big way. Children just don't know how to control themselves. What might be happening there, Tanya?
Okay, so this is
to resurface.
Okay, so what I'm going to share now is a little bit from my training that helps with parents understanding the concept of self-control and self-discipline.
Right.
Now, we're speaking of virtues here, which are good habits, and most of the time they're caught rather than taught. However, self-control and self-discipline does require an adult present to mediate and set the stage of what behavior is acceptable and how to manage, as Elizabeth spoke about. So I just wanted to take the opportunity here to put an analogy with a car. Now, of course, this is coming from an expert called Daniel Siegel, but this is incorporated into the Alive to Will training. So when we see the tantrum, the emotions guiding the action out of control, the role of the adult present is to stop. It is almost like the accelerator of the car is being pressed, and the role of the parent is to press the brakes. Yes? So what we as parents, either by a reprimand, a stern word, remember the look of the granny, just that look that stops the action, causes our children to literally pause, look around to see, okay, I'm supposed to stop that. Why is that? What happens next? And the role of the parent now is to, now that the child has stopped the action, actually use the opportunity to reconnect with them, either by an explanation, letting them calm down the emotions, etc. But reconnecting now that they've stopped the emotion. So what the child is learning is that action my parents did not like. But if I change my activity, they will reconnect with me and everything will work out. So that is how we as parents deal with the tantrums, the self-control, the addictive nature of certain vices. This is how we teach our children to develop self-control and self-discipline. And this is a virtue, again, that is not simply just caught by observation. We need to have an active role in this. And it's not a case, I should say, of this too shall pass. We have to step in and intervene as parents to help our children manage the emotion, redirect their energies, and come back at the end, reuniting with them, saying all is well. And that is the process. Because each time, if this is used, just like any other virtue practice, the time period will become shorter and shorter of the behavior itself. I hope that gave a little insight.
Certainly did. And I like to invite Elizabeth at this time, to share a little example of, how have you exercised that self-control in your own home, or an example that you may have that you are aware of.
Right. One of the tools that is recommended and I have tried is the stop and count to 10. You tell them to stop. You either tell them breathe, take deep breaths, and that calms them, or count to 10. Because even you as a parent, when a child does something out of character, or even you too need to step back and count to 10. So you impose that on the child as well. So tell them, take a break, stop, count to 10, breathe. And it gives you time to breathe as well. And then you kind of approach them. So this helps them too to control the emotion that they are going through before you can actually sit and recollect and then connect with them again. That is definitely a tool that has tried, and at least for me has worked.
I'm so happy you talked about the parent calming themselves down first too, huh? Because as we talk, as Tonya mentioned, it's caught. So if the parents in a tizzy, or the caregiver, whoever in a tizzy, the children follow in suit. So, it reminded me of the skills that I learned or are taught in common sense parenting, in preventive teaching. You see the child, the behavior, discipline, remember, is always about teaching the child. And, what are we going to do it differently? Maybe we need to, when you feel yourself getting upset, and parents, when you feel yourself getting upset, your lips trembling, your hands getting wet, your bodily, you're aware of what's happening in your body. And you're going to say something. What are you going to do to calm down? Are you going to walk away? Are you going to take some deep breaths? Are you going to, go and cook, go and sweat? Or what are you going to do to calm yourself down so that you could model for this child how, to be calm so that the child can be calm. So I remember learning that in Common Sense Parenting, which we offer the Family Life Commission in collaboration with the Franciscan Institute, that, self-control, teaching parents to take control of their own behaviors before they want to teach, or they begin to teach their child how to practice new behaviors. And it does involve some level of role play or rehearsing beforehand so that we can help the child to adapt new behaviors. Now we have a little less than 10 minutes. Time sure flies when you're having fun. Is there any other thing that you would like to share with us, Tanya, based on what a Life to the World does during this time frame that can help children and help parents?
Okay, well, the 5 to 9 age group is also the age when they talk about formation of conscience. So part and parcel of forming a child's conscience, and of course, our consciences, as we get older, are more finely tuned. But the point is, that age group is the time to really focus on developing it. So the way that Alive to World does this is remembering the golden rule. Now, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's part and parcel of how we interact with others, is the core essence of the Alive to World program. And how we introduce this is usually through sports. Now, we brought up play last week and the importance of sports and so forth, but it really emphasizes in a really good way that this age group can understand how we put into practice do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And we do it in 3 ways, mainly in respecting others. If you belong to a team, your teammates, love of justice, fair play, how we respect the decision of the umpire or the referee, and being compassionate, looking at the awareness of the needs of others. So in a sport, when we look at the golden rule, we put it in the context of thinking, acting, and evaluating. So if we're conscious of how the golden rule impacts on other people, then before we act, we would think about what we're going to do and the potential effects. So one example within the sport, which is the way we pitch it normally, is before a game, football game, let's say. Your coach will come together with you and you always strategize. This is your role, this is you have to mark, etc. So the child themselves understands that during the game, this is what I'm supposed to do. Then the game will happen, you'd play, you'd get feedback from the coach, etc. And afterwards, you sit back and evaluate and look at how the game went. Did you do what you're supposed to? How did it affect other people, etc. So it's taught in the context of a game. But I'm sure every parent listening, all of us could see how that could be applied to life. Yes, that if at this age, we could develop a habit of thinking before acting, and then after something has happened, looking and seeing how it could have been done differently, we can see how this particular habit will help in formation of a child's conscience and continue throughout life.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanya. So Elizabeth, in terms of conscience formation, in Amoris Laetitia, it talks about in number 37, we have been called to form consciences, not replace them. So, would you like to share an example of some concrete ways that we can help children form their consciences?
Well, I think, as you always say, they're patterned by our behavior. And I think that golden rule is so integral in how we as parents should pattern our lives that the children will reflect. If we too consider others, and we live in a community and in a society now where everybody's looking out for themselves. Everybody's on their own little bubble and nobody's seeing beyond that. And I think the child is also seeing the same thing. So if we too take that pattern in terms of respecting each other's opinion, respecting another's opinion about anything, the child in turn will, if they were a sibling, okay, you all are arguing, but you need to respect what that person is saying. You need to listen to what the person is saying. And it goes on into the simple thing as when you look at and we go out and interact with society, somebody approaches you with something, okay, the neighbor next door is old, you can go and help her carry her bags. This is beyond the home environment. This isn't a community. When the child sees that, they too are able to go beyond home. And when they see something, they will help. They will reach out and help without having you say, well, we need to go and do this. So instead of becoming a selfish society, slowly a selfless one. And it's just simply that golden rule. You put yourself in that person's shoes. And the child is the same thing. If somebody does something, you put yourself in his shoes. What would you have done? You know, so it helps them to identify with others and the parent as well. Looking at the wider community, they pattern from us. So we too need to uphold that golden rule. I think one of the activities for this actual particular thing is the child going to the parents and asking them, when did you, mommy or daddy or the guardian, when did you apply the golden rule? When did you put yourself in somebody else's shoe? And having that parent think about a time when they walked in somebody else's shoes and really considered that other person. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing those experiences. So our time is nearing an end. I don't know if there are any closing comments, Tonya, that you would like to share at this time.
Well, just to summarize, in terms of knowing, accepting, and doing, we need to live it out as the examples and demonstrate that there's something guiding us. We think before we act. Therefore, when our children ask us why we do certain things, we're able to give a reasoned explanation. We grew up in a time when I think all of us did as we were told. This next generation is questioning the whys from the time they can speak from primary school. And it's up to us to really think through our value systems, understand the reasons behind our beliefs, and to be able to verbalize it. And that way our children can adopt that same critical analysis, even especially with the media, the social media, the different ideas being presented, different ideologies being presented, to adapt a more critical thinking towards it and not just swallow everything wholesale, but challenge, question, understand your parents' beliefs, chat with them about why they believe certain things, so you can have a formed opinion, a formed conscience in determining where you see the truth and where you see something that is not genuine. And of course, practice what you preach. I think that is the key thing. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, so our children will do the same. I'm hoping at the end I'll be able to put the contact information up again. Trisha, yes? Okay, great. Yes.
Thank you, Tonya, for those closing remarks. Elizabeth, what about you? What would you like to say in closing?
Just to echo exactly what Tonya said, a lot of our children go through life just acting and behaving. And I think stopping and really questioning, because from 6, 7 is the why phase. Why, mommy? Why do we do this? Why do we come? Why are you saying this? Why are we doing this? That's the why phase. And it's really important that we give the reason. So even when they do something at school, they look and they think about it, because they play these little jokes, you know, the one where somebody's going and sit and they pull the chair from out from under them. Before you do something, you have to think about what will happen to the person if they miss the chair, you know? So why would you do something like that if you know the person is going to get hurt? So it really has to start with them thinking of the why and really thinking before they act. A lot of children just go through this dangerous game that came out where we're bobbing somebody between one another and they would move aside and the person would just fall. Why? So stop and really think before you do something and consider the consequences.
Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. So as we come to a close, next week we'll be looking at the threats, because we can't bury our heads in the sand. There are threats to, you know, what we teach as parents, and we're going to look at some of those threats next week. We're also going to look at handling some of those difficult questions around sexuality that children in this age group would normally ask. We're going to look at that as well. And we hope that you will continue to join us. Tonya, I know that you wanted to share in terms of how people can get in touch with Alive to the World. I know you wanted to share that slide. You can put it up on the screen and walk us through.
Sure. So if you are interested in having the program at your school, if it doesn't exist right now, please contact us. If you want to be a champion, if the program is already at your school and you want to be a champion, that means a full support, and that could be the link between Communities Alive and your school, please contact us. If you want to be trained or become a trainer, drop us a line. Interested in books, any of the books we have, this is what one of them looks like. Yes, so drop us a line. And of course, if you have any further questions, any clarifications that you need sort out, anything at all, please just give us a call or drop us a line, and we'll be happy to hear from you and respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Elizabeth is the contact person, and she's right here with us. So please reach out to Elizabeth in the contacts. I hope you took a screenshot. And as I said, we're going to go to threats and handling those early questions of 5 to 9-year-olds next week. So we hope that you will continue to join us in our health and family life education, the parenting edition. Thank you for viewing. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us. Thanks to all our viewers. We look forward to seeing you next week. And remember to share the live, share it with others so that they can be informed and educated and empowered to make a difference in their children's lives. We thank you for your presence, and God bless you.
God bless you.